All right, I'm going to go through adjusting a headset. This is on a regular, like a threadless, meaning the steer tube that comes up through here has no threads. It's a very smooth steer tubing, and then your stem slides over it, and then there's clamps that grab it for friction. But this top cap right here, that is meant for very, very light pressure. It's just a preload for the bearing. So we're taking a little bit of pressure and just taking the play out of this whole headset system. And if we put too much pressure, if we tighten this up too much, if we had to put a torque number on it, it could be 1 to maybe less than 3 Newton meters. But again, there's no set number. You're going by feel. It's almost like a handshake. You go to shake someone's hands. If they're not squeezing your hand, you're trying not to squeeze theirs too hard and overpower it. So you got to readjust or adjust on the fly type of thing. So top cap, always be very careful, very light pressure. The 2 clamp bolts are on the side here. Most stems have 2, and that's going to pinch that steer tube, which is pinching your whole fork system, hanging onto it. That's the most important for safety. That keeps your handlebars in line with your wheel. So when you have a bad crash or something, your bars go crooked, your bars straight, so you got to re-straighten everything out. So loosen those 2 first, then we can adjust up here. So if we want to know what that feels like when our headset needs adjustment, usually there's play in this whole system, a lot of rattling, jiggling. If you're to kind of gently lift up on your handlebar, you might feel a clunk clunk if you're unweighting the front wheel. So you want to loosen these first. That could be either a 4mm hex or a 5mm. And bolts do not have to come out all the way. Just get them like finger loose. It's got to be, you know, fairly jiggly loose. We're taking tension. We're releasing the grip. So we're releasing the steer tube, releasing the shock just a little bit. Now I can go ahead and make an adjustment here. If I want to really do a good check, bike is on the ground. I'm using my front brake here, squeezing the front brake lever, and then I'm doing a gentle movement forwards and backwards. And here I got just fingertips. And you can use this hand and these fingers as well, and I'm just doing a gentle forwards and backwards. Something like that. You don't want to have the tire slide on the ground. We're just doing a gentle movement, and that's going to allow you to let you know if there's any play in here. This system here, here's your head tube, here's your stem. So you can always put a finger on partial system. So part of your headset, you can see this top piece moving, and then the fixed portion, which is your frame. If you split your finger on both those items and do that front here and then 180 degrees on the other side and do that forwards, backwards, and careful not to be confused or get tricked by your handlebars turning left and right. That can give you a wrong impression. If you feel any play there, then that's when we're going to tighten this guy up here. And we're just doing a quarter turn at a time, real gentle. So if I feel loose, I'm just going to turn about. Right now it's tight, so I'm going to back this off. I want to back it off a quarter turn roughly. Boom, that movement right there, that'll be an adjustment. And then you check it, because we just want to get rid of that play. As soon as you get rid of that play, we made that nice gentle contact. And then I might give it just a little extra, about the same amount or slightly less, just to ensure that it's good to go, because there might be a slight break-in period. So I'm being preemptive so I don't have to come back. And then you can always lift your wheel off the ground. So we're checking 2 things. We're taking play and knocking out of this headset, but we also don't want to put too much pressure on the bearings and compress it, because then it's going to be hard to turn. It's either going to feel it, you're going to feel that, or you're going to hear it crack. So get that front tire off the ground a couple inches, and then just turn your bar. And if your bars are loose and moving separate from your fork and it's getting awkward, just grab your fork and turn left and right and give it nice full turns. It should feel nice and smooth, real easy, light action, super buttery. If it's a little tight, then maybe we tighten this a little tight. If you're having 2 issues where you still have play and it's really easy to turn, and this nut is getting really tight, this preload is getting too tight, we were saying if we're getting over like 4 or 5 Newton meters, something's going on. We have something going on in the headset. Something could be upside down, something could be missing, or we don't have enough spacers. So your top cap could be running into your steer tube, which we do not want. There should be about a 3mm gap between your top cap and your steer tube. So there's a little bit of a gap right underneath this guy. All right, so imagine here we got our stem. This would be our steer tube coming through, which is basically your fork there. So when you slide this back on, you might have a couple spacers down here. You're going to bring this down, and notice how the steer tube is protruding up past that. We do not want that. I can bring the stem up by putting a couple spacers down here, bring that up. Now my steer tube is flush, and we don't want that either. We need that steer tube to be lower. So I'm going to turn this a little bit. So we're going to be adding spacers here, or you could add spacers on top too. If you add spacers on the bottom, it's going to bring you up, you know, as your body position up a little bit. And it could be 5-10 millimeters. Or you can put them up on top here to create that space. But we want approximately 3 millimeters of space from the top edge of your stem to the top edge of that steer tube. So ultimately, we want something like that, where that steer tube is approximately 3 millimeters below the surface, top surface of that stem right there. If you don't have that, then you'll never get your play out of your headset. It may feel like it for maybe a ride or two, but if you're on the edge, it'll feel good, and then after your ride, after compression and riding, it might readjust itself and then go back to being flush again, and then your play is going to come back. You can add your spacer here to the top if maybe your steer tube is a little too short, and then you can create your space that way, or you can place it on the bottom, which will bring your stem up and give you what you need there as well.